Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fieros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, I'm excited. We've got Cameron Hastings on the show. So Cameron's a principal over at Land Theory and has quite the background in portfolio strategy across various types of commercial real estate in his career thus far. He's a real estate and digital infrastructure investor. He's also an advisor to accredited investors and private funds, as well as a management consultant working with businesses across industries on real estate portfolio strategy. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to have you on. Glad to have you on. And I'm sure it's probably a little bit cooler where you are than where I'm at right now. I just got back to Hawaii and enjoying our nice 80-degree balmy weather, but I know it's still wintertime where you're at. So
definitely still winter here, yes.
We'll send some sunshine and some sandy winds and whatnot your way. So, well, for those of our listeners that may not be familiar with you and kind of Land Theory, your company, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get started in the industry? How did you lead up to your position now?
Sure. So I started my career as an architect, actually. I went to architecture school and moved to New York right after undergrad and started with the architecture firm Gensler, where I focused initially, my first couple months were designing law firm interiors in high rises in Manhattan, but I pretty quickly transitioned to doing base buildings and renovations of the buildings themselves, working for the landlords. So in that role, I designed almost 2 million square feet of office space in New York, a little in LA, and then a large project in DC for the General Services Administration. And what I learned in that role was that I was really more interested in what my developer clients were doing than what I was doing as an architect, and that the role of an architect was not as all-encompassing as I envisioned when I went to architecture school and kind of in popular culture, that you're not really the one who gets to decide what happens to the project. And you're certainly not the one that benefits from its ongoing management once the project is actually built. So I realized that I wanted to shift more towards real estate. I still, still to today, I use my design skills and I see that as part of the skill set within real estate, but I wanted to broaden it out. So I went back to grad school. I got my master's in real estate development here in New York. And the first role I had after that was working for a multifamily developer. So while I'd been an architect, I'd started my own little projects. I was flipping houses in New Jersey, kind of nights and weekends, taking the bus from Midtown where I worked to these often dilapidated houses that I was renovating. So I understood the physical aspects of buildings. I definitely understood the design part of them, but I didn't understand them as businesses, and I didn't understand them as investments. And while I could sort of do financial modeling, I didn't get it to the point where I could scale it up to the next step. So grad school was really instrumental for me in that, in getting that financial analysis skills, learning how to think about these as investments rather than as design projects, which is how I'd been thinking about them previously. So my first role was with this multifamily developer that I think they were about 15 years old, and they were in a part of their firm's life where they were moving away from their legacy assets, which were more B, C type properties, smaller scale properties, maybe 4 units to 12 units that they'd either acquired or had built themselves in some cases, and moving towards these larger scale assets. So 150, 200 units, ground up class A type construction, fully amenitized. So I helped them sell off some of those legacy assets. This was in 2020. So interest rates had just gone to basically zero. So we refinanced their entire portfolio and then I helped them with some of the development work for the new projects. So put up a 150 unit new development project. And that was a really valuable role in that I learned what it meant to own these properties, control them, be the developer, be the one who's in charge of really everything. But I learned also some limitations of that kind of model, that to do that well, you generally need to be focused on one property type in one market. You can expand once you get bigger, but it's really not until you're a larger, more capable firm. And I wanted to learn more about different kinds of property. I didn't necessarily want to say, okay, multifamily in Jersey City is my career now. So I went on to another role at Newmark, the brokerage firm, where I was working as a management consultant. And in that role, I focused on portfolio strategy for both investors as well as end users. So corporations that had office buildings or industrial facilities or retail properties that they were using for their own business. And in that role, I created portfolio strategies for about 5.5 million square feet of property across many different property types, ranging from more traditional like office and industrial to more specialized like data centers or electric vehicle battery plants, both in the US, a little bit in Europe, and a little bit in Asia. And then over the last couple of years, I've taken those experiences of kind of the hands-on development, the more high-level portfolio work where you're creating strategies, but someone else is actually executing, and put them together into this advisory work that I do now, which is both land theory and Celine Brighthouse, where I'm a partner, where we're focusing on unanchored strip centers. So I still do advisory work for various types of clients, but I'm also starting to focus on these specific types of investments with some partners.
That's awesome. I mean, you had spanned, the breadth of real estate. And that's wonderful. Yeah, I love hearing stories like that. And we talked a little bit about, I feel like off camera or before we started recording about, I feel like a lot of the conversations that I've had over the years, it's typically like first to failure. It's like, hey, you know what, the first to just get out there, hey, we're just going to try stuff. It's not that you're shotgunning things, but you're getting in there, you're getting your hands dirty. And I feel like oftentimes, I feel like any one of these different paths of your career is taking you. A lot of times people will just like, okay, well, I'm going to do this for the next 20 years, this next 30 years. And I'm good. Just like how you said, well, hey, I'm going to be the New York multifamily guy. And that's just going to be my lane. Or you mentioned you were doing some fix and flips. Well, hey, I'm a fix and flipper, and that's just going to be what I do. And that's all I do, right? I don't do anything else. But you have picked up like stuff all along your journey. I'm hearing that okay, well, look, I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna add to my skill set here. I'm gonna take something here. I'm gonna take the best of that. And okay, like you're able to take a step back, analyze the things that you've been doing, and okay, well, hey, look, this works. Great. Like let's incorporate this into kind of a larger. You're able to take a step back, look at the macro picture, and say, okay, what can I incorporate from this and this and this strategy and what these people are doing? And I think too often people aren't willing to, hey, I'm servicing this client. Well, what is the client doing? The client is obviously spending tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, depending on what kind of company that you're working for. How about you take away something from climb the ladder just a little bit more, so even just strategy wise, and say, okay, well, hey, I'm not on that scale, but hey, what can I take away? Something's working for them or has worked for them. How can I incorporate that into what I'm doing now? So, I love this. And there's so much to unpack kind of in just even that brief story to where you are today. Would you mind just sharing with us maybe just some struggles along the way? Like whether that be due to the fix and flip, obviously you're taking trades away from your immediate space of where you are. A lot of times people just want, I just want to invest where I can next door, like in my neighborhood. Okay, well, hey, you've traveled the world to go and learn or to glean from these different countries and the ways they do different models and how things work in different spaces. Would you mind sharing a little bit with us and just maybe some key takeaways or some challenges that you faced along the way?
Yeah, I think that fix and flip actually, I mean, that was kind of my first struggle in real estate, which was a struggle for a couple of reasons. One is I got into it without enough knowledge and wanting to do it all myself. So that was kind of two, I think, things that I would do differently if I were to do it again. Is one, I wouldn't try to just learn everything myself and head right into it, especially while I was still working a W-2, so I couldn't put all my attention into it. I would go out and look for a partner that I could work with so that I could still benefit from the project. I could still have some control, but like you were saying about what I've learned from all these different kinds of companies that I've worked with as clients, find someone that I could have learned from to see what they did and how they did it in the beginning. The other thing that happened for me with those fix and flips is after a little while, I realized I was competing directly against contractors who were themselves the ones who were hammering the shingles on. And so it was really difficult to compete on price. Even if I could deliver a similar, better quality product, my competitors that were contractors doing it could almost always deliver it for less than I could. So that was also a lesson just in terms of finding an area where you can have a competitive advantage. And it's not usually the simplest thing or the most direct thing, like I'm just going to flip houses. It usually takes some kind of looking somewhere that others are not for whatever reason, either because maybe they're too small or because they take some kind of specialized knowledge, or they're just a property type or a strategy that's not familiar to most people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. One of the things that we would typically try to look for is like, okay, well, what's your unfair advantage? Because
Mhm.
like that for the contractors, hey, their unfair advantage is, guess what? They do the work. So just
Right.
to your point, they can undercut anybody else coming in to try and evaluate that same project,
Mhm.
likely get it done for substantially less. So that's their unfair advantage. So yeah, it's like going into any strategy. It's like, well, what's yours? Like just like you said, do you have a specialized knowledge? Do you have experience? Do you have capital that the other people just don't have access to, or whatever? Like, no. So that's awesome. So do you still like actively own real estate, or are you just consulting on others? Like, hey, you've dipped into, I feel like the bag of kind of different strategies over the years. Do you still own?
So one of the things that we're doing right now with my partners at Sleem Bright House are starting to build a portfolio of retail properties.
Etc.
So that process is kind of at the beginning stages. This is a new venture, a new firm, but we are looking at acquiring what are called unanchored strip centers in Southern California and in Dallas Fort Worth. There's a couple reasons for the focus on the property type and focus on the market. The market reason is first because that's where my partners are based. So that kind of deep knowledge of the market as well as the property type within that market, I think is critical. Similar to what
Goes back to the unfair advantage. Like, hey, you have somebody on the ground that knows that property, knows that real estate, knows the area better than anybody else, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so in both cases, they've lived in those markets either their entire lives or they've been there for 40 years and have been doing real estate there. So similar to what I said about the Jersey City multifamily, that to do really well in real estate investing, I do think that you need a specialization in a market and a property type. But you as an investor don't necessarily need to limit yourself to that if
Mhm.
you have partners that have those skills. So as an investor and operator, you can maybe be exposed to lots of different property types as long as within your team or within your partnership, there is that specialized expertise and that specialized knowledge. So that's part of the reason for the focus on the markets. And then the focus on the property types on these unanchored strip centers, and I can go into a little bit about what those are for anyone who's not familiar. But so the strip center part, these are common properties. The strip refers to this generally the shape of the building. They're usually just straight rectangles. Sometimes they're an L, but single kind of loaded inline spaces. The unanchored part refers to not having a big box space or a national credit tenant. So instead of having a grocery store or a Home Depot or a Target and then some small inline spaces, they're all inline spaces. And those can range from as small as, say, 500 square feet to maybe 10,000 would be the larger end before you start to think of it more as an anchor space. But frequently they're in the, say, 1,000 to 3,000 range. So pretty small spaces, depending on where they are in the country. And our two markets specifically, some of these tenants are only paying $1,000, $2,000 a month. So there's a lot of businesses that can take that kind of space. When you're talking about a 100,000 square foot former Home Depot or Target, there's not a lot of businesses that can take that space. It's going to be another national or global brand. So when one of those spaces goes dark, it's one, difficult to find the new tenant. You can have a long-term vacancy issue, but it's also a lot more difficult to negotiate the terms with them because when you're negotiating against Home Depot or Target, they have dozens or hundreds of people that their entire job is to negotiate the best deal that they can for their company. And so when you're a small company negotiating against these global behemoths, with all the resources in the world, it can be really hard to get a deal that's the right one for you and for your investors. So focusing on
Yeah.
unanchored centers where it's more local businesses, not to mean that that they're not credit worthy. They don't
Right.
have an S&P or a Moody's rating, but it doesn't mean they haven't paid their rent every single month for 30 years in that space, or that they're not well capitalized. Maybe not billions of dollars, but they can be doing quite well without the kind of official credit rating.
They could still be a chain. They could still be something national. They just don't need the giant footprint, which I think a lot of
Right?
companies are going away from just because of through COVID and all of the
Yep.
lessons kind of learned over this last market cycle. No, that's awesome. And that was going to be, you answered a ton of questions that I would have, immediately came to mind. It's like, well, I mean, for one, you're just able to stay nimble. Like, hey, you got a lot of the smaller spaces. Well, guess what? Yeah, it's funny that you said that. Like, whenever these big box retailers go out, man, that's a really narrow window that, you can have as a company to come in. Last night was just at a Bed Bath and Beyond. Well, what formerly was a Bed Bath and Beyond,
Mhm.
which is just this huge empty space that sat vacant for years. until I'm literally there for a birthday party because they put in one of these huge indoor kind of playgrounds. But I'm
Yep.
like, they probably got that thing for pennies on the dollar because
Right.
again, like who's looking for tens of thousands of square or thousands of square feet worth of space, of floor space? And there's just not going to be that many companies that are out there that can do that. So yeah, no, I love that. That's a great strategy. That leads me kind of to another question is, where do you guys kind of see, obviously we've had a lot of rockiness in the market the last few years. For one, through COVID, now the fallout from that, like within the last 2 years, let's say, with interest rates being up, and now we're dealing with insurance. Kind of where do you guys see what's heading towards the market? Got some clarity now that we've had the elections are done. And
Mhm.
okay, well, great. It doesn't matter if you're political or not. If you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, you really need to be keyed in. It doesn't matter necessarily who you voted for, but it's important to, hey, I need to know what their economic plan is so we can move forward kind of with some more certainty other than just the leading up to an election, let's say. So where do you see us trending towards? Does that help to provide your team any clarity on kind of what's happening and moving forward, or your strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last couple of years, say 5 years, and we're almost at that 5 year mark where everything shut down, is
Crazy.
kind of a pressure test for different property types, different strategies, and different approaches. So what we've seen with these unanchored centers, which are typically in local communities surrounded by residential, is now that so many people are working from home, they're actually getting frequented more often than they were before. That instead of going to get your lunch or your coffee or do your dry cleaning downtown where your office was, maybe now you're in your neighborhood 7 days a week. You're there every day instead of 2 days a week when you used to be there on the weekends and maybe evenings when everything else was closed. So foot traffic is actually up in these centers, and they become a more important part of the daily routine of people that are now working in their own neighborhoods. So that's been kind of one of the tests and seeing what's happened there. The disruptions from COVID and now interest rates in terms of the ability to add new supply is also an advantage. So we have, I mean, it's been quite a while now in retail that there hasn't really been much supply growth at all. Right now, it's about a quarter percentage of the existing supply is being added a year versus about 10 times that for some other property types like multifamily or industrial. So the supply growth is extremely low, and it's gotten to the point where rents are going to need to catch up, in some cases double, for it to justify new development. Right now, it costs, as a national average, somewhere between $400 and $500 a square foot to build a new property, whereas you could buy a good quality property, maybe it's a little bit older from the 80s to 2000, say, for 300 a foot. So pretty significant discount to what it would cost to build new, but similar property. Again, these are pretty simple properties. So one that was built in 1980 versus one built today, it's not the same difference as an office building that's built now. And maybe the ceilings are a bit higher, maybe there's a bit better insulation or glazing, but they're not significantly different. The property type hasn't changed that much. So a couple of the things that have happened in the last few years, those two being the pandemic and interest rates being where they are, in some ways are an advantage because one, we've seen it's been tested as a strategy. It's limited the supply. And we're now at a point where these properties are pretty cheap. We're seeing many options for good quality properties ranging from 7 to 8 caps, which just a couple of years ago would have been horrible quality properties.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. I agree with a lot of the different, your evaluation of that, a lot of that. I mean, we used to have properties in multiple different markets, and you kind of, when we're talking a little bit about your history, you guys saw, well, hey, look, in order to kind of scale to multiple markets, you have to be kind of a larger size. We found that out when we tried to do multiple markets before scaling up to that big. But what you're able to narrow down and focus, it provides additional clarity. But we've seen a lot of that too. It's like, okay, well, hey, you just don't have that amount of new inventory that's coming online, right, to be competitive with. And the existing supply, because the rates are so high, it's keeping a lid kind of on pricing as well. So you're able to come in and, okay, well, hey, I can get a great deal on something where, hey, the cost to build now, cost of capital, cost of labor, all that stuff is through the roof, materials. So it's like, okay, in order to get that same level of product online, it's going to be prohibitively expensive compared to make the numbers work. So you can come in, be nimble, get in there, make some deals happen. I love it. I love it. That's great. Well, is that going to be where you guys continue to operate and continue to move forward, press into that space until something else changes, or is that the
Mhm.
strategy for the foreseeable future?
So at the moment, yeah, the strategy on unanchored strip centers is the focus. We may make that a little bit wider to include smaller properties, single tenant properties in some cases, especially if they're out parcels of some of these centers. One of the additional strategies, which is a little bit more opportunistic, is some of these centers have parking lots that are kind of oversized relative to the current demand. In some cases, because they were just built for larger cars. In some cases, they were just people can now walk or ride the bike, or there's better public transportation than when they first were built. So there's opportunities to add pad sites around the perimeter. So that's also an opportunity to add income. And with those, a little bit different strategy in that we would generally be looking for credit tenants on those and leasing them much longer term, and then probably selling them off and keeping the center itself. So selling off that 5,000 square foot, what used to be parking lot, which is now a Chick-fil-A or Starbucks or something like that, can also add a lot of value. But the other part of our focus on these centers is that we're starting to see institutional adoption, which is really just beginning. I think that there has been a lot of talk about these properties, especially as some of the other previous darlings, like maybe industrial, are starting to lose a little bit of their luster. And some of the property types, like retail in general, but especially strip centers that have sort of been ignored for the last few years or maybe even 10 years, are starting to become more appealing. So the first publicly traded REIT just went on the market in October that's just focused on these. They were a spin-off of a larger, more general shopping center focused REIT. And that unanchored portion that's spin-off is actually now larger than the previous, the parent company. So this strategy is actually doing better for them than their old strategy of more traditional shopping centers. We're also seeing some larger players like JP Morgan and Nuveen start to have vehicles like this. Crow Holdings in Dallas, a large family office, has a specific vehicle focused on these unanchored centers. So in the same way that property types like self-storage and what's happening with single-family rentals, where over time they go from very fragmented markets to much more consolidated, where, say, in the 90s, self-storage was maybe about 5% institutional, 95% owned by individuals. It's now 40, 50% institutional. Similar thing is projected with single family rentals, where right now it's still around 5%, but in the next couple of years, we maybe get to 30% in terms of private equity or REIT owners. And a similar thing is happening with these centers. So in those previous historical analogs, those were major pushes in terms of cap rate compression and the ability to sell portfolios rather than individual assets. Kind of introduces more liquidity into that niche in the market, which is generally good for pricing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for those of our listeners, kind of, okay, I want you to listen to the things that Cameron's talking about. Like, and this may be far beyond what you're doing. Let's say you're fix and flips, or if you're just so, hey, I'm a buy and hold long-term rental guy, like a single family guy. Okay, that's fine. But you need to understand like what's happening in the market. So Cameron's talking about the different things that him and his team, look, capital has to find a home. Like there's just because, hey, we have some contraction, let's say, in what has been working for the last 10 years or whatever, the capital is still out there. In fact, there's more in the market, let's say now than ever before. That capital has to find a home. So when he's talking about the REITs, look, they're looking to invest. That institutional capital is looking for a home. It has to work. It can't stay sitting on the sidelines, especially with the amount of debasement we're having. Hey, look, they're losing value the more they're sitting in just cash. So there's always opportunity. So you need to look, and whether that be your local market or maybe it's in another state, I always try to encourage people like, hey, look, you don't have to stay in your home market. Go to where, it's going to treat you best. Like you look at Cameron. Cameron lives up in the Northeast, but he's investing thousands of miles away and the West Coast and down in Texas where we invest, because again, that's where it makes sense. That's where the money will move the best according to his needs and his team's needs. He's got his competitive advantage in those markets. So don't be afraid to do that. If it doesn't make sense in your market or whatever your strategy is, don't be afraid to change things up as well. Find a mentor, find somebody else who's been successful in that space. Maybe they have a competitive advantage in that space, and go find out what they're doing. Maybe, hey, you can partner with them, and that can be something else that you add as a different strategy, another way that you can capitalize in the space. That's the one thing that I've learned being in real estate for the last 20 years. You have to be nimble.
Yep.
Everybody thinks like, well, no, the market just does this and it just goes always in kind of a straight line, or we've got this slight increase. Not like that. We go through market cycles. You have to know what's working in that market cycle at that time. And really you need to know before it hits, because you want to be in that path of progress in terms of like, okay, well, what's the next thing, like what's happening, what, is shifting, what tides are happening in the marketplace where, okay, look, there's going to be demand for this. Okay, great. Like we need to jump in front of that. So don't be afraid to be nimble. Don't be afraid to change your strategy. I get it if you've been doing single family rentals for the last however long. If that works for you, awesome. But if you're looking for better returns or you're looking to diversify your portfolio or your strategy, I would definitely highly recommend looking into some of the things that Cameron's been talking about, we've been talking about on the show. But well, Cameron, this is a point of a show. We have what we call our fire round, which is a little bit more brief Q&A, a little bit more fun questions. That's something you're up for?
Yes, I am.
All right, awesome. Well, so first question. So what is your favorite book recommendation other than, for all of us real estate junkies, it's Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a huge mindset book. So other than the Purple Bible, do you have any favorite go-to? And it can be anything, honestly. It doesn't have to be real estate. It can be business. It can be mindset. It can be whatever, personal development, anything.
So this is an economics book by Robert Shiller. It's called Irrational Exuberance. So Robert is a economics professor at Yale. And I really like this book because it's about where people get too excited in the market, where prices go up. And this happened in real estate in 21, where people were buying deals for 3 caps, which are now 6 caps. So there at times when the market seems really safe and it seems like everything is going up are actually the most dangerous times. And in the times when everything seems like it's scary and dangerous can be safer times because the value's already been destroyed. So that concept of irrational exuberance, I think, is a powerful one.
Yep. No, that's a great book recommendation. Yeah. All right. Next question. What would you consider your superpower to be?
I think that given my combination of design experience and financial experience, I think it can be easier for me than some other people to just visualize what's going to happen. I can see a building and think, okay, this is what it could be, both from a financial, operational perspective, but also a physical perspective. Whereas for some other people, it may take, you need to go get a designer, you need to go get someone else to bring it all together. I think that my experience has helped me bring it all together within my own self.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that. And so just as a quick aside, so what the Cameron's talking about, like Cameron has that vision to be able to go see something for what it could be, the potential of it. You may not personally have that vision, like just for listeners. But again, you want somebody like that on your team. So you can find a Cameron. He's obviously got skills beyond that, but that's a huge skill. And so if that's not something that you can do, that's totally fine. Go partner with somebody, go consult with somebody. Maybe it is Cameron or their team. Hit them up for some consulting. But you can go find somebody like that you can work with. Let's say, well, I'm just not great. Okay, well, hey, you know what? Change that thought. Well, if you don't have to be, maybe you're awesome. Maybe you're the finance guy. Maybe you are the guy swinging the hammer, and that's your competitive advantage. Go find somebody who has the eye for the possibility, the potential of that particular property. So, all right, next question. What would you say your biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
I think and this has been in the last couple of years, I think that the importance of diversification is something that I did not think enough about early on in my career, and I put too much in. And in my case, that's been focusing on real estate. And so in the last couple of years, I've going through the cycle that we just have in 21, saying, wow, everything I own is worth so much. And then in 22 and 23, seeing some of those gains evaporate, realizing that even though I can be diversified within real estate, I also need to be diversified in other things, in private equity and venture capital and other types of investments, so that I can still have my specialty, but I should also myself be a passive investor in other industries.
Yeah, very good. And see, guys, if you're listening in, and like I said, there's a lot of people here that I think have a hard time, and a lot of investors that I've met with over the years have a really hard time letting go of control. And it's like, look, you're never going to be the best at everything. It's impossible. If you look at any Super Bowl winning, like the team that just won, like it was the Eagles that won, it's not one guy that won, right? It's literally a team, and you guys only see the players on the field. But what you don't see is all of the coaches and the trainers and the facility guys and everybody else that it takes to make that happen. So being able to diversify your skill set and diversify your investments is such a huge game changer. Like you don't want to have to work for every last dollar. Like go find some rock stars that are in another industry, another field, another market, place some capital and let them go to work. Let them do their thing while you're still staying in your lane and you can stay focused on what it is that you're doing. So no, that's great. All right. Last question. If you could go back in time, talk to your 20-year-old self, what advice would you have for him?
I think that I would tell myself to be a little more patient. When I was 20, I wanted it all today. And now that it's been a little over 10 years since I'm 31 now, it takes longer than you want it to learn what you need to get the experience. And part of that is that cycles in the market are long. So just to be participating in a real estate market or whatever industry you're in for long enough to actually see a full cycle play out, it's a long time. And so if you've only been operating in a portion of that, whether it's a boom period or a bust period, you can't project what's going to happen. So being more patient, I think would have been good advice for my younger self.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, probably for most of them. The sky's not falling today. Like things will change. If you're not where you are with your portfolio or your career or whatever, guess what? Like get in, jump in. Don't wait on the sidelines. That's not what we're saying. But have some patience for the returns and the benefit. The work that you put in today, you will see bear fruit tomorrow and in the days to come. So no, very good. Well, you know what, Cameron, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, they want to reach out to your group and they want to pick your brain or maybe hit you up for some consulting, or what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Or you have a site or your socials, or what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yep. So anybody can find me on LinkedIn under Cameron Hastings, but they can also go to CelineBrighthouse.com, which is our company focus on retail properties, and can email me at Cameron@CelineBrighthouse.com.
Awesome. Well, Cameron, it's been a pleasure having you in the show. I've greatly appreciated our conversation, and I hope you have an awesome day. We'll look forward to circling back with you in the future and kind of see where you guys are at with Celine Brighthouse and where you see the market heading, and then in a couple of years.
Well, great. Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Aloha. Oh, what an awesome conversation with Cameron Hastings over at Celine Brighthouse. Great insight into different market cycles, to different strategies. He's had an incredible career. Even, he's a young guy, but it just shows you what you can accomplish, let's say, even within a decade of just jumping in, educating yourself, partnering with the right people, and having a clear vision for what it is that you're trying to achieve. They're doing awesome things. And obviously now with their company's focus on small retail. And again, you don't have to do the same strategy, but it's important that you take away all those different lessons that people like Cameron and people like us and other people who are doing things, just take a gem, take something away, take a little nugget away and see how you can incorporate that into your overall investing strategy or whatever it is that you're currently doing, or maybe something you're looking to add. The key thing he was talking about was diversification and patience. Dive in and see how that can benefit you, your family, your business. It can be incredibly impactful. Well, guys, if you're interested in investing with us, you can go to TriCityEquity.com. You can learn more about our previous deals, things that we've got coming up. If you want to stay in the loop and stay in touch with us, definitely can schedule a call or just reach out. Glad to connect with you. And if you're looking to connect with local like-minded investors and you're based here in Hawaii, we have a monthly meetup. We meet every month over at Honolulu Multifamily and More. A great group of guys and girls that come out, investors, got tons of experience. So even if you're just getting started, it's a great way to connect with other people here locally. But also, don't forget, buy your tickets now for our annual conference, a Hawaii Millionaires Mindset Conference. It's coming up June 19th through the 21st. So it's going to be 3 days, absolute jam-packed business and real estate speakers, teachers. Again, if you want to be around like-minded investors, that's the best conference here in the state. It truly is regarding business and real estate. We've got a jam-packed lineup. It's going to be awesome. So make sure that you go over to MillionaireMindsetBlueprint.com. You can get your tickets today. It's going to be the best pricing you're going to be able to get. So don't miss out on that. Guys, if you're finding value in the podcast, make sure that you're sharing the episode. Make sure that you're leaving a review. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe now. I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit the like button, subscribe, so you can stay in tune with all the latest episode drops. We want to stay connected with you. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. We'll sign off and we'll see you on the next one. Go out, take some action, and we'll see you on the next episode.